Okay,
Yes.
guys, we're going live.
Okay.
Okay.
Want to let you
It
know?
was just a random thought because I installed it just to set up caffeine.
Well, yeah, this is a good idea. Maybe that's how users can disable their extensions when 44 comes out.
Yeah, it's a lot better than the official GNOME extension manager. Okay. We
Alrighty
hit the go
then.
live button.
Yeah, we're there.
I should probably mute that.
We're live. If anyone's in the chat right now, if we could get some yays or nays on the audio, this is me speaking some words, and if the audio levels are good, that'd be great. Josh, you speak some words.
I'm speaking all the words in the world. I'm speaking more words than last time, and they are just as creative as last week.
You're awesome. And Steve.
Thank you.
I'm talking to my wiener right here. It's called a microphone.
Well, didn't expect that coming out. Steve, you will avoid having loud inputs of air into your microphone if you point it at the corner of your mouth instead of speaking straight into it.
Yeah.
Oh, like that?
Just
like
have
that?
it just slightly off to the side, just like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you talk, just don't look directly at it.
Okay. Or the pop filter.
I mean, it's either that or you put the pop filter back on. Yeah.
Yeah, but it will cover half my face because I have the beanie because I'm cold like...
You want to
like
talk
that
about
was.
cold? I have to turn off heaters just to be in this podcast.
I'm not turning mine off. Screw that. It's like
it's fine. It's 40 degrees down here.
Oh, it's actually 31 now, but it was like -10 overnight.
It was. It was cold.
It's supposed to be like 45 next week. It's dumb.
Audio is broken. I think you guys are muted. I'm sorry.
Audio.
I'm not muted.
Right above that, all good with audio. I think you probably just have your headphones, on wrong.
He might have the YouTube video muted.
Or
you might be using a beta version of Pipewire.
I see
Pipewire on Debian Stable because I attempted that. It doesn't work.
I see some audio good.
Everything sounds good. We are demonetized. One of those circles. I have circles for you guys.
Excuse me.
That said, just to preface this chat here before the show, there's a random chance that I might just disappear completely. I don't know yet. It's been working relatively reliably so far today.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, now that you say that, it's definitely going to happen.
Of course.
See what we're saying.
Matt, I just wanted to, before we start recording, wanted to ask you, how do you go about keeping your podcast? You leave temporarily the live stream up. You work on the local version and re-upload it, or
no? The live stream just stays up. That's it.
Oh,
he doesn't fix it.
The only thing that I do is a couple hours later go through and put in some time steps so people can skip the pre-show if they want to. That's literally all I do. I used to pull it down, edit it, and post it back up on the day after. Then patrons would get it a little bit early, but
that turned out to be too professional for him.
Well, no, I hated the bifurcation of views, so I'd get 1,200 views on the live stream, and then I'd get another 800 or 900 or whatever it was at the time on the regular one, and I hated them being separate. I wanted them just to be all together. So I just do it this way, and now people are used to it. So this is the way I do it. It works.
Oh,
it works.
That is exactly the reason why I was asking, because the bifurcation of views. Because on the last episode, I re-uploaded it. I had 300 views on the live version, but only 100 on the edited version. So I'm like, bifurcation. But I have to. I cannot leave the one with all the missing subjects because of my ISP cutting me off in mid-conversation. So the live version will not be understandable.
If I really cared about being a perfectionist on this, we just would not do it live. We'd just record it and then I'd edit it and upload it. That's what I would do.
And I used to do it that way.
I've considered just not doing it live, but the chat is fun. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
People enjoy it. So I just have learned to live with not being a perfectionist on the video version of the podcast. If people want perfection on the podcast, they'll listen to the audio version, which is edited for audio at least. So
Oh my God. My ISP is so bad right now. He's throttling me so bad that I'm getting the YouTube video that I'm watching in the background is 240p.
maybe save some bandwidth and not watch the YouTube video at the same time.
Just
But I
pop
wanna-
out the chat and close the other window.
But I want to see Matt's beautiful, lovely face.
I know. I will get V4L loopback working this week if I have a chance. I promise. I'll do that instead.
Oh.
I'll do that instead of installing Gen 2 tomorrow, which is what I was gonna do.
Oh, you were going to install Gen 2 tomorrow? I was also going to install Gen 2 tomorrow because this operating system I'm on is complete garbage.
It doesn't even have the GNU core utils. I don't understand how can you.
I was curious.
So here's the best thing about that though, Josh, is that when someone tries to connect you and say, well, what you're really using is GNU/Linux. Nuh-uh.
Yeah, I'm just using Linux. There's no GNU here. I'm not even using Bash.
That's awesome. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. You guys got your recording apparatus things ready to
yes.
go? Okay.
Yes, record on 3.
And you've tested them, right? Hold on a second.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see. Recording started.
Okay, I'm gonna hit record in Audacity. I'm gonna hit record in OBS.
Yeah.
And seeing as how Tyler is not here,
Okay. No, stop recording. Playback recording. Make sure it actually works. It works.
This time around, my clap will be clear.
good, because the last 2 times I haven't heard it at all. It's made it very. I just line it up because that's the reason. A good reason why I always had Steve go last saying his name, because then I can put him. I know where him saying his name's supposed to go. So I'm recording. You guys recording?
Yeah,
I am recording.
All right, Josh, lead us off on the slap or the clap. You have the least latency.
Okay. So we're gonna do the 3, 2, 1, but we're going to do 3, 2, 1 imaginary 0 and then clap. Just to clarify this for everybody. Let's do this right the first time.
Damn it! Why is it always your 3?
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
That's actually the closest we've ever got.
That's because I took the time to clarify first. Do we want to try this for a second time just to make sure?
I would have known. I'm good. I would actually have just started to blame Tyler if you hadn't said anything. Okay. It still wasn't exact. Nobody in the chat tell me that you guys weren't even close. Trust me, we were closer than we have ever gotten before. It's good enough. Okay. Let's see here. I think
it was last week we clapped 4 times just to make sure.
Yeah. All right. I can close that now. Let's go ahead and make sure everything is going the way it's supposed to go. I'm going to test the solo shots. They're not pretty, unfortunately. I didn't have a chance to get a background. So there's
Just to talk to the chat here, just to let you know, he put in this wonderful dynamic transform there in the center of the screen last week, and it took a lot of effort for him to do that. And then this week, Zany decided that he wasn't going to show up. So Matt then had to completely redo all of his transforms just for 3 of us to be here, which is why we don't have dynamically changing names between our name and our relevant handles.
Wow, Josh! Wow, you're useful today.
You're welcome.
All right.
I'm glad I'm useful for something other than trolling Steve.
All right, let's go ahead and get started, fellas.
All right.
All right.
Me, Josh, Steve. Me, Josh, Steve. Okay. Steve, I know you're always last. That's not a diss to you. It's just then I know where to put you. Okay, in case your clap doesn't come through.
The older the people, the last. The old people are always last.
We should. Well, we'll just beauty before age, I guess. I don't know. We can't say age before beauty because he's the oldest one. You're grandpa. It's all right. Hey everybody, welcome to the Linux Cast. I'm your host Matt,
and I'm Josh.
And I'm Steve-O.
Yes, he is. All right, so if you're watching and you're listening, you may notice a difference here. Tyler is not here. He's on a Mickey Mouse cruise. He's not actually on a Mickey Mouse cruise. He's on some kind of, like, I don't know what cruise he was on, but I made fun of him because I had hoped that he was on the Mickey Mouse cruise. Because that would have been highly entertaining and would have just led to many, many, many jokes. Like, what were you doing with that mouse there, Tyler? Yeah, so I can help myself. Anyways, he's on a cruise. He'll be gone this week, and next week he will return, so don't worry about it. So that is the podcast. We're going to leave now, I guess. I don't know. This is the Linux...
I miss him already.
He's the one that keeps us together and on topic. So that's what you guys should expect from this. We're not going to be on topic. So this is the Linux Cast. We talk about Linuxy things, and that's what we plan on doing today. We talk about, the news and stuff like that. But first, Josh, what have you been doing this week in Linux?
Well, you see, last week I decided I was going to install a development release of a distro just so that way I can actually, mess around with... apparently my camera's broken, but it's fine. But anyways, last week I installed OpenMandriva, the Cooker edition, so I can look at the latest and greatest of KDE Plasma. So this week, in fact, this morning, because I decided I was going to install Realman's operating system of Gen 2 Linux again, and that failed miserably because I don't know how to set up a encrypted root file system. Apparently, I decided, you know what, last ditch effort. We looked at Plasma last week. Let's look at GNOME this week. So I installed the world's greatest operating system of GNOME OS, and that's what I'm talking to you now from. So there's a chance that because this is a development preview and it's not necessarily a real operating system that any logical person is supposed to use, there's a chance everything on my end might actually crash because, I'm currently joining you guys through Epiphany, the world's greatest web browser. And by the way, Matt, you should probably look at it.
I made a video on it.
You should make an updated video because that is much better. Holy crap.
Did they finally add... I know they were adding plugins, but when I tested it, they hadn't added it yet. Are the plugins working yet?
Extensions exist. They exist. They're just not present.
I got burned last week when I was using Vivaldi. I'm kind of very... touchy when I'm using other browsers now.
Well, you see, the best thing right now is that you can actually play back YouTube videos with actual hardware acceleration.
Oh, you mean it's not going to be like stop bit motion anymore? Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
It's honestly like the second most flawless YouTube experience I've ever had without having to use Google Chrome. It is just below Firefox these days. Just barely.
I think if you were actually to use GNOME, it probably would, because it fits in very prettily, but only if you never use a browser.
Yep, but anyways, so if you don't know what GNOME OS is, I highly recommend that you install GNOME boxes through Flatpak and tell it to install GNOME OS for you. Don't do what I did, install it on hardware, because GNOME OS is literally just enough operating system for GNOME. And basically, there is no such thing as like a package manager. It's a Linux-based distribution, which, by the way, as I discussed with Matt earlier, there are no GNU core utils here. So I'm on a GNU-free system. So I am not using GNU/Linux. So you neckbeards, you shut up right now. There is no GNU in my operating system. So I am using Linux.
All right, can we just talk about this for a second? Like, Linux developers, specifically distro and desktop environment developers, have a serious problem. I'm not talking to you, Steve. This is where we got to be really careful talking about distro developers when there's one sitting right over there. See, he's got his arms clustered. Like, let me see what he's got to say about this now. Anyways, why? Like, what was the purpose of creating your own thing for this? Like, GNOME OS. It does not make any sense to me whatsoever. Just use, Fedora is already basically base vanilla GNOME. They make hardly any changes to it whatsoever out of the box. Why not just use Fedora? Even KDE Neon just used Ubuntu. They didn't create their own thing. Like, yeah, they've decided to create their own package manager, PKCon or whatever it's called, or whatever. But it still has apt installed and still has the GNU core utils and still pulls from the Ubuntu repositories and stuff like that. So, I mean, what was the purpose of creating a development platform separate from a different distribution? What could possibly be the development? I mean, because when you're creating a piece of software, what you want to do is test it on something that somebody's actually going to use, right?
So the main reason for GNOME OS's existence is actually not intended for GNOME itself. It's actually for extension maintainers and developers, because it's a precompiled version of the next preview release of GNOME. So it's actually intended for extension developers to be able to pull that down and run it as in a virtual machine and be able to develop and maintain their extension for future versions of GNOME, because not every single extension developer is using anything like Fedora Rawhide or like Arch in the testing repositories. That's really it.
Right, but they could have just taken Fedora Rawhide and just made that their distro.
I mean, they are using OS tree, so there's a little bit of that.
It didn't. In this case, to me, it just did not make any sense to make anything new. But that's beside the point. All right, Steve, what did you do this week in Linux?
Me this week, Linux. Maintain work on Zero Linux, of course, the GNOME edition.
He's working on Zero Hype or HypeX.
No. I did it. I built one for myself already. It's done, but it's broken. It's not working 100% well. But I was working on Zero G. But other than that, I was reading a lot on the Arch Wiki, because I needed to understand more about what my distro is working on top of, which is Arch. So I wanted to know more about Arch and stop preaching to the users RTFM when I didn't RTFM to begin with. So I was like, stop preaching and do what you're preaching. So yeah, that's what I've been doing with Linux for the past week, and struggling with my ISP, because when you want to go live, you don't want to go live with YouTube cutting you halfway because not enough data is being received, when users and listeners will get half the subjects you're talking about. So nothing much. And I was working on some of your XFCE rice. I wanted to see if I can implement some of it into KDE, of the ideas.
Xerox OS. Xerox. Xerox.
Yeah, and then I have a lawsuit on my hands. And I've been messing around with a few tools here and there, and OBS. Mainly OBS. OBS has been occupying most of my time, because OBS is very sensitive when you use plugins that from the dark web, as I call them, from places that are not 100% supported, basically.
I don't use a single OBS plugin.
I don't either. I tried one that got merged into OBS itself, and then I didn't need it anymore. So
I used two.
I want to, but then I see they're written in Lua for the most part, and I kind of want to.
Yeah, that is.
You can use Lua or Python to develop it to develop a plugin for OBS.
I saw most of them are developed in Lua.
Most of them are, because Lua is just a better language than Python when it comes in terms of performance.
I don't have a rat in that race, but I would just say I don't like Lua. I like Python. So
I don't blame you.
The plugin I was talking about was the way you can add per application audio. It's a Pipewire thing. You can add per application audio. I tried using Jack. Yeah, it's a nightmare, dude.
You just create a Jack source in OBS and then and then use your patch bay and point the audio feed to it.
See, Josh has all these words, but then he doesn't realize that those words don't really translate into things that I understand.
That makes two of us, dude. That makes two of us.
I'll do a video on it just for you, Steve.
Also, does Jack work on Pipewire?
Yes.
Yeah, if you can make it work on Pipewire, but it needs a lot of work.
Why on earth then? Why do we need Pipewire? If all the same tools work and are just going to stay the same, what was I don't answer that. I don't need to know. It doesn't matter.
You're digging a deep hole right there.
Pipewire is latency free.
Sure.
No, but be able to add each application's audio instead of recording the desktop audio, that is amazing, because you can for the basic use of this one is you can record a game. Let's say you're playing a game, instead of recording the desktop audio and have all your clackety clacks and stuff sound off, or your Discord notifications sound out. You're just capturing the game audio.
I would love that, because then I could. Although it wouldn't work because both you guys' audio is coming through Discord, so it still wouldn't work for me.
Yeah,
but there are other applications. There are other applications that work.
Like me,
just
which
have
gives
Josh
me a
call in on Jitsi and Steve UP on Discord, and then we'll get Tyler to call in on Skype just to troll him.
Actually, I think Skype does actually channel an individual audio feed if you tell Skype to run through a Jack server, which Pipewire does act as a Jack server.
Skype supports, what is that, NVC, something like that. I'm not sure if that's what it's called, and that will actually send out like the actual like video and audio stream, whereas Discord does not support that, which is and if it did support it, you'd need Nitro.
You probably would need Nitro.
Okay.
Yeah, but the basic use for me that will allow me to plug another thing I'm working on is Zero Plays. Zero Plays is going to be something where I stream up to 4 hours of gameplay. It will allow me to capture just the game audio instead of getting the notifications in. But this plugin has been merged into OBS, but it's merged, but not yet public. I don't know what it's there. It's accepted. It's all in green. They're waiting for one guy to finally do one thing to check, and it's out there in OBS, but it's still not out there.
All right.
It's amazing.
I thought about using the Snap version of OBS because Martin Wimpress packages that, and he has a ton of different plugins that he built right into that Snap. And it's Snap, and I don't want to use Snap, so that's not going to happen. All right, so
speaking of which, you are on Fedora. So since you're on Fedora, can't you add the Glorious Eggroll repositories and grab his OBS package, because it's an amazing package that I would like to port to Arch.
I'm sure I probably could. Yeah, I just haven't. I just used the regular standard Flatpak.
There's an OBS AUR build that has all the features.
Don't.
Oh, you know what I'm talking about. Okay.
Titan 652.
Yeah, that one. But anyways, Matt, since you're using OBS, if you're using the Flatpak version of OBS, you can actually install some plugins through Flatpak.
I'm sure I can. I just haven't because.
Yeah, I honestly think that you would love the motion animation plugin.
Well, I always look at some of them very, I really want to use them, but then I have so many problems with OBS as it is. It feels like almost like using mods on games in Skype. Like mods are really cool in Steam, and especially like say City Skylines, which is the game I play the most often on Steam. I use a ton of mods, but they crash the game all the time. That's what I'm worried about with OBS. Like I know if I add one plugin, I'm going to add a whole bunch of plugins, and then there's going to be two plugins that don't work really well together, and then it's going to crash midway through the stream, and then I'm going to be screwed.
You are not wrong, Matt. You are not wrong. I can attest to that. But there's one thing, we're talking about Flatpaks. There's one thing reviewers like yourself and others keep saying about Flatpaks, which isn't true. It might be true for some packages, but it's not true for all of them. Like you can do Flatpak install OBS. You don't need to know the full whatever full package name.
For some of them you do, but not all of them.
I mean, that's what I said. Some of them you need because they have convoluted names.
I
but
think
most
originally
of the packages,
I said that, but that was like 2 years ago, so you can't hold me to that stuff.
yeah. Well,
I mean, it was true back then too.
yeah. Well, the way I do it, I just install I installed Zonotic yesterday because I have a game to play with someone. I typed Flatpak install Zonotic and installed Zonotic. So
that works some of the time. But also I don't. Sometimes that doesn't. I mean, it works, but then, like, say for example, OBS. You type in.
it will give.
It gives you like 12 different ones, and you have to search through the ones. And
12? No, more like 26 or 27.
Whatever.
Well, I can find out real quick for you. Let's do let's bust out this here. Let's do a Flatpak search OBS. There are 47 options.
Right, and the problem is that they're in a different order every time you do it.
Yep.
That's correct.
So
it is absolutely correct.
So you can't just memorize like, hey, it's always 2. I found that it most usually is 2, but sometimes it's not 2, and then you end up installing something that's not what you're supposed to.
But that has an argument. If you don't do it that way, it will not show you the plugins for OBS for those who want to use plugins. You have to type Flatpak install OBS to get
show everything. Just put them in alphabetical order. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Literally
Flatpak
all I'm
needs
asking.
to get
well,
better.
hey, you know what? We're already off on a tangent, and let's take a moment and ask Matt, what did you do in Linux this week?
Yeah. All right. So I'm not going to talk about that. Instead, I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm installing Gen 2 tomorrow. That's my plan, and I'm going to do it all by myself. That's the reason why I want to do this. Is I actually want to go through the Gen 2 wiki or documentation, or whatever, install it by myself. Because Josh, you and Ben always have like things. You guys know how to do it, and you know what to skip.
We have opinions, and Gen 2 allows opinions. So
yeah,
I understand.
So I want to actually follow the guide for once and read through why you need to do each thing, why you don't need to do some things or whatever. Because when I do it from you guys, I just kind of skip the rationale between each step and just copy and paste the commands, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to install it all by myself, and we'll see how it goes. I'm not wiping out Fedora, so we don't have to worry about that. I'll actually probably do it.
I was just going to say that. I was like, you're wiping Fedora?
No. My plan is just to do it from Fedora, is like install it through Fedora and just onto my other hard drive. That's my plan.
Well, Matt, just to let you know, even though it boots, that doesn't mean that you're done installing Gen 2. It's actually about a 3-week process before you can actually say that you successfully installed Gen 2.
Well, I know that that's true because half of the time, because you still have to do all the
you have to do all the use flags, recompiles, all the little tinkering.
And struggle with dbus for at least half a day. Because you know that's going to happen every single time. Anyways, I'm sorry, Matt, but by yourself, I don't recommend it, dude. Thank you, Ben.
Matt, if anything, I do recommend that you at least have the IRC chat room connected to Libera chat, and you're sitting in the Gen 2 chat room. That way, if you do have issues, you can ask in there and go like, "Hey, I'm getting this dependency conflict. Hey, can any of you help me figure this out?" At least be able to do that.
My purpose isn't necessarily to even get to a finished system. I just want to try it and learn some stuff. So if I fail, I'll start over again. That's the fun thing. Anyways, that's what I plan on doing for tomorrow. Let's go ahead then and move on to what we're actually supposed to be talking about. But that's okay. We had some good conversations there. So let's see here. Josh, why don't you tell us your first news item of the week?
If you guys know anything about Linux is all about community and collaborative work, which, as a result, one of the most important features for anybody that uses Linux for like media content creation or like media viewing or consumption or anything like that, are happy to see that Red Hat is officially hosting a Hackfest for implementing HDR support on Linux. Basically, what a Hackfest is that's when they grab a bunch of people physically and put them all in the same room and tell them to work on something. Just like the good old days. And of course, as a person that doesn't have an HDR compatible device, I have no idea what HDR actually looks like. But nonetheless, I'm told that high dynamic range viewership is amazing to look at and very beautiful. So I'm excited to have a prettier screen. But
this is cool.
It is cool. And of course,
go ahead.
Honestly, like it's a feature that we've needed to be working on, and I'm glad that we're finally getting around to it. I know that there was some news recently about Valve hiring some guy to work on HDR, but I think it was last year or 2 years ago. Carlos Soriano, it was actually hired by Red Hat to work on or not Carlos, but Sebastian Wick. Was hired by Red Hat to work on HDR support, and he has actually gotten a relatively decent framework to be able to get the implementation in there. It's just that he needs help because he's literally been the one guy working on HDR support, which, to my understanding, is a very complicated thing to be able to set up. So it's honestly like he's needed help, and Valve investing into it now, that's pretty big because people like their video games when they're pretty.
This is going to be Wayland, right?
It probably will be Wayland. It's probably not going to be backported to Xorg anytime soon. But to my understanding, from like what I know of HDR, is primarily a driver implementation. So it might work on Xorg. I don't know.
Cool. I have no interest in HDR whatsoever because I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference because it's crappy monitors. But it's cool for those people who have HDR. So.
Well, HDR. I see this whole idea behind HDR a bit weird because very few people can see HDR, can benefit from HDR. I mean, you need to have a TV with HDR support, which is not easy to get. You have to have a monitor with HDR support, which is expensive to get. So HDR is for those people who love the eye candy.
Well, it used to be the same case for high definition too.
Well, it will trigger.
No, high definition was easier to get than HDR is today.
Not when it first came out. when HDR first came out, it was really freaking expensive. I mean, like you go to the store and you want like $4,000 or $5,000 for a TV. It definitely has come down in price, and HDR stuff will too. But I don't think, and this is where you're right, Steve, is that the difference between standard definition and high definition was so vast that I mean, if you stared between two TVs, that one was SD, one was HD, you could tell the difference. Everyone could tell the difference, right? Whereas with non-HDR and regular HDR, that's really going to depend on the monitor or the TV, because it's going to depend on the brightness of the display, the environment that you're in, because it requires like 2,000 nits or something like that. It's I don't know what the actual number is, but it requires a huge amount of brightness. And if you're in a bright like room or whatever, it makes very little difference from what I've read. I don't know if that's actually true. And
I have HDR TV. I can tell you the difference. Okay, I come from a cinema background. Grandfather, my father, everybody, my sister is a director, my best friend is a director. Everybody is in the cinema world. But from a perspective of, it's like talking to a normal person and an audiophile when it comes to audio. If you come to me and you ask me what is the difference between regular and HDR worth it, I would say, if you're a regular person, no, it's not worth it. If you are how we say it in French, cinéphile.
Well, like I said, if you're a content creator, it's probably a fantastic thing to have.
A content creator or a cinema lover or a visual lover. Like me, for example, when it comes to anamorphic widescreen, people keep fighting me. I don't want to see black bars on top and bottom. Crop the image. They crop the image. They mess it up, and they lose like 60% of the image just because they hate black bars. Same thing with HDR. To me, it's the same thing. Don't get rid of HDR for me, but for a regular person, they're not going to notice the difference. On the contrary, they're going to hate HDR. because HDR is a little bit darker, a little bit more tone neutral. If I could say, it would seem weird to the user. And no, unless you are a person who is immersed into cinematography and understand the science of the image, like why noise is necessary, grain noise, or whatever you want to call it, is necessary to feel the analog aspect of the image. If you don't understand all that, then HDR is not for you. Just watch regular content. I see a lot of people downloading movies that are 350 megabytes in size, and they're okay with it. Why introduce HDR to those people? And those people are the majority, not the minority. Not to save bandwidth, they just download it because they just want to watch the movie and get it over with. They don't care what the image looks like.
I mean, there are a lot of people who want the highest. I mean, that's the reason why 4K exists, because most people, maybe not most people, but if people,
it's a hype. It's a hype thing. It's a hype thing.
I can't tell. I can tell the difference between 4K and HD, but the difference between 4K and HD is not so great that I care to download 80 gigabytes for a YouTube video. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Well,
like,
I know it's not that high, but you know what I mean.
I myself either buy or download movies that are 4K remux. When you see the word remux in the name, that means it's uncompressed. It's as it is from the disc to the MKV format. It's as is, untouched, uncompressed. That's the ones I download, and sometimes they reach as high as 170 to 200 gigabytes in size. Depends on the length of the movie, of course. But like Ben-Hur, when the 4K release comes out, no, it did come out. It's one of the best remasters ever made in 4K.
It's like remember back when you used to be able to get, there were some movies that were so long they came on 2 VHS tapes, and then,
yeah,
for sure, like the Titanic came that way, and there's several
others.
The
Titanic came on too. I think there was some early versions of
two versions. No, there were two versions of Titanic. There was a long play version on VHS.
Yeah, the extended cut. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is on. I think the Return of the King is on like 3 VHS tapes for the director's cut.
Well, even on DVD, the Lord of the Rings came in on 2, and that was that's fairly recently, like within the last 15 years or whatever. But before that, there was a movie called Gangs of New York. It had Daniel Day-Lewis in it and Leonardo DiCaprio. That came out on two DVDs, and that wasn't even an extended cut. That was just the movie.
The Lord of the Rings extended Blu-rays came on 3 Blu-rays.
Yeah, but anyways, when it comes down to HDR, I'm just glad that we're getting support for it. That's what I'm most excited about. It's not like I actually plan to use it. Just like, but one of these days, 10 years in the future, I might have an HDR display and a fully HDR compatible system, and I'd be excited if my operating system also supported it.
Yeah, because eventually they're going to find a standard that works for everybody, and it will filter down into the
just like RGB.
It'll just come. It'll just come down, and it will be a thing that you have. You know what I mean?
It's a technology they're coming up with it right now because gaming in HDR is different. Yes, watching movies
video
in
games
HDR
have pushed so much 3D acceleration technology. It's insane.
Well, I mean, gaming and porn have always pushed the display technology.
Well, porn has pushed video camera technology, not necessarily 3D graphics.
Well, I mean, hey, you want to know what? I probably. Anyways, probably should not go into that discussion there. Anyways,
the internet is made for porn.
Yeah, Steve, your first link of the week.
My first link of the week is Budgie 10.7 is out. For someone who doesn't use Budgie or has ever used Budgie, I've been following the news. That's as far as I went with Budgie, but I kind of like it as opposed to GNOME because they do things a little bit better than GNOME. That I want to keep it very simple, but Budgie desktop lead developer Joshua Strobel announced that general availability of Budgie 10.7 as the latest stable update. Well, the changes it makes a lot of big changes in this one. The Budgie menu user menu this feature this time around that promises to let you open file manager straight to predefined directories like home, documents. We had those on a lot of desktop environments, but why we didn't have them on Budgie, I don't know.
Don't they just use
So-
Nautilus?
Budgie used to use Nautilus, but in
Yeah.
this release, they're changing the default file manager from Nautilus. I think they're actually using Nemo nowadays.
Yes, they are. That's better than Nautilus.
Well, okay. First of all, anything's better than Nautilus. So let's not let's not.
What do you
get
mean?
too
Nautilus
excited.
is an amazing file manager. He
No,
handles my desktop icons for me.
Like up until like half a month ago, it didn't even have a tree view or whatever it was. All right, so I have two things to say about this. First, Budgie 11 is at least 5 years away. That's my bet.
Yeah.
I think they've been touting
Minimum.
Budgie 11 since 2017 at least. When I
Yeah.
first started using Linux, they were planning on Budgie 11. It's still not here. It probably is never going to be here. I'm sorry. The developer guy is like really, really friendly. He's very, very active in the community, but that thing's never coming. The second thing that I had to say is that, man, do I really wish Budgie used just one settings panel. That always bugged me, like they have two different...
That is something I asked Josh Strobel directly on Mastodon, and he said that yes, there will be one settings panel for everything in Budgie 11.
Yeah. Okay. No, you'll get the feature that you want in the version that never comes. Okay. I know they're switching between frameworks and stuff, and that takes time. But geez, oh Pete.
Yeah, but it hasn't been recently somebody leaving Budgie and
Well, so Budgie used to be part of the Solus project,
yeah,
and then they
they're
had
now separate.
They're not
Yeah,
separate.
now they're separate.
And
Which basically means that you have no reason to run Solus anymore.
well, I mean, I don't know that you ever had a good reason to run it to begin with. Their repositories are not good. Better than
And
some
slow.
distros.
I mean,
but they're
I could
very, very
actually make
slow.
an argument for Solus 2 years ago, but nowadays there's just no reason to.
We don't have to get into that conversation because Solus is a fine distribution, but it's just not something that I could recommend to most people. But so they have separated out. But I don't know if this is true or not. But do you guys think that it's just Josh over there developing this thing, or if, it just feels like it's just him?
He's like the most public face. There are some people that are working on it.
He's kind of
Well,
like
let's
the
see.
Nicolo of Budgie. He's the public figure
Let's
of
see,
Budgie.
where is their website listing? They have a whole list of the developers. Let's see, buddiesofbudgie.org. Let's see, where is this GitHub link? Primary
have to-
contributors.
You
It
have to
is
go all the way there.
yeah. So it's primarily Josh Strobel, and then there's actually another guy named Campbell Jones that's working on it. But Campbell Jones hasn't always been a very public kind of person. I think he does. He has written a couple of the blog posts, but primarily it's Josh.
Most
So
of
yes,
the commits are by Josh, no?
I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the fact that their power dialog was hidden, well, less accessible, and now it's more accessible.
I think go ahead.
They were a little bit late to the game, kinda. I don't know.
Well, their biggest issue. All right, so this has always been Budgie's issue is that they changed. Like, it's like they have ADD. They changed things over, and now they've changed file managers. And they're changing from GTK to EFL. The thing with their frameworks is they've been GTK, since the beginning. Then they decided that they're going to change to Qt. And that didn't work out. And then they got pissed off at GTK again, so now they're switching to EFL. And they've done that with a lot of their decisions where it just feels like they've moved between and made different decisions, on a whim sometimes. And
they kind of remind me of someone I know, me.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It just prevents them from ever getting to, the next version, which is fine, but it's just the way they work. So I actually haven't used Budgie in at least a year. I should definitely check it out again because it's one of those desktop environments that has potential because it's just different enough from GNOME, but it used to
And there's still GTK 3, not GTK 4.
Well,
No
there's
Libat
no,
Vita yet.
there's no chance of them getting GTK 4 because they're working on EFL now, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
I mean, it's the
Uh,
same issue that Cinnamon runs into, where it's like the Cinnamon is a fork of GNOME 30. I think it's a fork of like GNOME 3.20. So like their window manager Mutter is based off of Mutter 3.22, and it is so old at this point. It's just like
Wait.
the Cinnamon.
No.
Pretty
Wait.
sure they just fixed that.
No. Mutter 3.28 is, to me, from my testing on 0G, is still better, more stable than the latest Mutter, because the latest Mutter and Mesa are not cohesive. They're not friends. They're like opposite sides of the or similar sides of the magnet. They keep pushing each other out. So it's like
I don't
one
know,
update, Mutter updates, Mesa breaks. Mesa updates, Mutter breaks. They're
Well,
never meeting anywhere.
when you run a system like GNOME OS, you don't have to worry about that, because so far Mutter has been the most stable thing in my operating system compared to everything else.
Okay, because maybe you don't have Mesa.
You know.
I don't think I do.
There you go. As soon as you install Mesa, that the problem will start. But and the fact that Budgie just introduced in 10.7 a screenshot tool that is as easy to use as GNOME's version or KDE's version, that makes me feel they're kind of okay. It's a nice change for the people who use.
They're playing a lot of catch up, but not a whole lot of innovation. That's
Gotcha.
really what the
They
issue is.
Especially when there's no reason for them to have spent time on that, when they could have just used the GNOME. I mean, like I know why they don't, because they don't like GNOME. You know what I mean? Like, but the thing we have other screenshot tools that are really good. Like Flame Shot exists and is fantastic. We should just use that.
There is one good thing I need to I can say, however, about the 10.7 version, because I tested it in a VM curiosity. Their indexer is much quicker than the new indexer that they introduced in 10.7 is way quicker than GNOME's and KDE's. Because
I think
KDE's
it's actually
Baloo,
written in C. That's why.
yeah, because KDE's Baloo is the first thing I disable when I install. The first thing that I disabled on Zero Linux, because Baloo, especially when you install on spinning hard drives, it renders everything very less responsive, because it's constantly indexing every single file that you copy and paste and you move around and stuff. It's a nightmare. But their implementation, you barely feel it. It's just something, I don't know how they did it, but maybe it's in C, like you said. I'm not a developer, so I don't know. And they made performance, and another thing that is good, they made performance much better. On a cold boot, I got it to, it was using like around 520 megs in the VM, so it might be using less on real hardware. So that's about it. Other than that, not many changes. They stuck to the safe end of things. Which, on a side note, I wanted to ask you guys and the chat, what, since I'm a distro developer, is a distro that has reached its peak or potential. You heard me ask that question on my Discord, on my podcast, Josh. But like Zero Linux, if I say it reached what I set out to reach, would you still be downloading just the tweaked version, or let's say bug fix release, or it would lose its pizzazz?
I still think that, like, as a distro developer, you should still push out releases, even if they're just bug fixes, because that makes the out of the box experience better.
I'm not saying I will stop. I'm not saying I will stop.
Well,
I'm just
I
saying,
understand.
Just
But-
bug release,
Yeah.
bug fix releases better than no releases, of course. But if
When
it doesn't have any
I mean,
changing,
it's the same situation as to why people still use XFCE, because how often does XFCE actually update, Matt?
Oh, it's actually updated more often than usual, but
It,
usually
it
about
has
once
been
a year.
updated more often lately, but how often has it historically updated?
Oh,
Almost never.
every couple
There was
of
a period of
years.
time.
Yeah.
There was a period of time where you went 3.5 solid years without a single XFCE blog post.
4.4 like 14 or whatever, 4.12 or whatever it was. It was there
Yeah,
for a long
we had
time.
4.12 for a very long time, to the point where like Debian Stable had the most modern version of XFCE.
Because it's just one dude, you know. It's basically just one guy that does it.
same like me. So will it lose its pizzazz, its charm, whatever?
No, because look, XFCE is a fantastic example. It's stayed the same since the 90s. You know, it hasn't changed, and yet they're still upgrading it. And
they're updating packages. That's all they're doing. They're not making major changes. Now they are, because 4.20.
Hey, don't preempt the next news there, douche.
Okay. But in general, what I'm saying is I can continue releasing bug fix updates without worrying about it losing its charm. That's what I'm asking.
No, I think that it depends, right? It depends on what you're known for. Like XFCE is known for not changing. Okay? If Plasma stopped pushing out brand new features, it would no longer be what people expect to be of Plasma, right? Plasma is supposed to get a whole bunch of new features every time it does release, and I mean, I would love for them to say, hey, we're gonna just take a year off from new features and we're gonna fix all the bugs. So that's what I would love. But the vast majority of that community expects every time Nate releases a blog post to say, hey, here's 5 new features.
Yeah. No, I'll be shipping all the Plasma updates that Plasma pushes, but like special features by me.
The vast
tweaks.
majority of people, once they have your distro installed, if they're gonna just stick on that distro, no longer care about the distro's features.
Yeah, realistically, it's just advertising for the brand new user that you're doing at that point.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I still think that's a worthwhile endeavor, because
Really?
you should never not support the brand new user.
Plus, always getting better, making your installer better, making it look nicer and stuff like that. And also because you ship with a desktop environment that changes all the time, and we'll have new looks and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong.
Except for GNOME.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, but even GNOME has changed over the course of the last 10 years. I mean,
it's been a big change this past year alone, and though
it's changed. So I mean, sure, you could stay the same for a little while, but eventually something in the desktop environment that you use is going to prompt you to change something, whether it be from your installer standpoint or you need to move your welcome screen from GTK3 to GTK4, GTK5, or whatever. Eventually, you're going to have to do something to fit in. Otherwise, you're going to have a welcome screen that looks from Windows 98, and everything else is going to be updated, right? All right.
Oh, these things will change as the thing progresses, but yeah. I was just asking you guys. Thank you for your input. That's very helpful, especially now that my brain was empty. I was drawing a blank.
I don't think a distro or a desktop environment is ever going to be there are some pieces of software that can be just finished.
Matt, how often do you go into your bash RC and adjust something?
I had aliases, but I have a separate file for that.
That's technically modifying your bash RC, because you're
so maybe
importing your aliases through your bash RC, most likely
2 or 3 times a year, probably.
Yeah, that is the same logic exists there for like a desktop environment. You're never actually done with it.
Well, because you always think of something new you want to add to it. It's the Linux user's curse. You want to tweak stuff. All right. Anyways, moving on to the next one, which is mine, and I'm going to go ahead and do the one that Steve was alluding to, things that we were just talking about, XFCE. XFCE 4.20 is going to be a big change because it's going to finally support Wayland. And I don't know how I feel about this, guys. You guys know me and Wayland, we don't really get along all that much. And like we were talking about, XFCE is not known for users who really appreciate change.
Correct.
So
honestly, it's a worthwhile endeavor.
Oh no, I'm sure it is. My question is going to be: are they going to? do like GNOME does and keep 2 different sessions there. So if you want to continue to use Xorg, you can. Or are you just going to, when you install 4.20, you're going to be using Wayland whether you like it or not? I don't know.
Of course, they're not gonna switch to Wayland, only Wayland. They're gonna keep the X11 session there.
Does it say that in this article?
No, but I've seen it somewhere where it's going to be like all since it uses LightDM. XFCE uses LightDM as its login manager. So in LightDM, by nature, you have all the sessions, and they're gonna keep the X11. They cannot, because if they switched completely to Wayland, they're gonna lose a lot of their user base.
Yeah,
because not everyone can support Wayland.
I can still see them maintaining XFWM for a good while yet, because Wayland itself is not a completed protocol that's fully implemented and everything works flawlessly under Wayland. That's just not a thing that happens right now. In like 5-6 years, that whole scenario might change, where it's just like you might see more systems that are completely X free. But there is still value in maintaining the Xorg version of XFWM, because XFWM does not actually rely on any actual GTK libraries, because it is just a window manager.
Well, the thing is that the developers behind XFCE aren't known for maintaining multiple versions of anything, right? They don't have LTS releases or anything like that. It's just when the new version comes out, that's what's supported. So they're not known for having packages that like old packages that they just kind of put in maintenance mode, as far as I'm aware, which is basically what they would do with the Xorg version. The
Xorg stuff is just bug fix maintenance and stuff like that. When it comes time to implement Wayland, it's just going to be bug fixes for X11 and the majority of the work happening on Wayland. But X11 is not going to cease to get, because X11 itself has.
Okay, so here's my point, and the reason why I'm a little worried about this, because if you've used Wayland before, you know that there are certain things when you move over there that you have to find alternatives to. Like for a while there, it was like Rofi would not work on Wayland, so you had to find a different version. And that's the reason why Tofi and Wolfie things. It's the reason why those exist, and they didn't just use Rofi, right? Rofi works now, but it didn't when Wayland first came out. And there are many things like that, like screenshot tools are a big one. A lot of the screenshot tools that work in Xorg do not work in Wayland. So, and things specifically in XFCE that are display related, probably
like the panel. One of them, the panel is not Wayland support. It's not supported by Wayland for some reason.
It works.
It works. It works.
Yeah.
Well, okay. It doesn't. There are things in XFCE that are meant for X that will have to be ported over to Wayland, and having to maintain both versions of those things, even if one just goes into bug fix mode, is more than the XFCE devs have ever done before. Okay, because usually when something's old, they just stop supporting it. They move on to the new thing.
There's a proposal right now that to actually completely kill off X support in future versions of GTK. I think they're talking about like GTK 5 at this point.
Yeah, that's...
So we're a while away from that. So at some point, XFCE does need to make the change to Wayland, and they will eventually drop the Xorg fork if they want to stay a relatively relevant project.
Well, I think.
Yeah, sorry, Matt. Continue.
I'm just thinking that there's a good... Because I haven't seen anywhere where it says that they're going to actually keep the Xorg version. I'm assuming that they will, but it still feels very non-XFCE to me to have 2 different versions that they have to maintain, because they don't do that. They just maintain one thing, and that's...
You're basing all this on their track record, which is not wrong. But Wayland, because Wayland itself is not 100% ready... It won't be ready by 4.20. It's not only about Wayland. It's the fault of all the applications that people use out there. They need to get updated to have Wayland support. If not everybody is in like harmony and updated to support each other, it's not worth it to kill one session for another.
X Wayland was perfect. If X Wayland was perfect and actually worked, like across the board, it wouldn't be a problem because then X Wayland could just pick up the slack for anything that didn't work in Wayland. X Wayland would pick it up and it would just, it would work in a whatever, way it's supposed to work. But it's not 100%. Things have to be, developed to use X Wayland because obviously something that was developed, 10 years ago or whatever has no clue to look for X Wayland, So.
But then again, 4.20 could be 2 years down the pike. Who knows when 4.20 will be out?
Yeah, we are thinking because 4.18 and 4.19 came really, really fast. 4.20 could be 3-4 years from now. I mean,
it could be. You know what? That's fine because XFCE software is generally like some of the most polished desktop applications that we can actually get on Linux.
Yeah, things don't break in XFCE.
Yeah,
because they don't change.
And you said something on the previous episode that XFCE's settings panel, if you know CSS, you can add whatever you want to it. This is what makes the XFCE settings thing more attractive to me. That's why I chose it to use with the Hyperland in the version that I built for fun over the KDE settings. Although, because a couple of episodes ago of 0 Bytes, we had the developer, the creator of Hyperland, on as a guest. So he was like, the best part of using KDE settings panel in Hyperland is that the settings that are not Hyperland specific or anything you can do when you are on Hyperland, they'll be hidden. So you'll have a almost bare KDE settings panel.
And it's simply because XFCE is like the one desktop environment where it's actually POSIX compliant, where every tool is uniquely portable from each other. Yeah. That's why when you install Thunar doesn't have like USB drive support. You have to install a separate package to be able to implement that into Thunar.
Yeah. So, but it's just to say that XFCE, the XFCE developers are to be admired because, like you said, it's very hard to break XFCE unless you use PyCom.
Yeah.
If you use PyCom,
stick to Compton.
Either Compton or stick to whatever comes with XFCE. I forgot what it was called. XFCE Compositor.
It's XFCE Comp. But yeah. You could always go back to Compass. Get yourself some wobbly windows, man. All right, moving on
to the cube. Or the cube.
Yeah. Moving on to the contact information. If you want to get in contact with us, you can do so in any number of ways. Probably the best way is to check out the website, which is available at linuxcast.org, which is where you'll find all the previous episodes, all the way back to season 1, along with several of my blog posts, which you can go there and peruse at your leisure. You can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/linuxcast. You can subscribe to the channel at youtube.com/thelinuxcast. I think I messed that up. Patreon.com/linuxcast. youtube.com/linuxcast. You know what I was talking about. Anyways,
just Google the Linux Cast and you find them.
Yeah, the SEO did finally float to the top. Anyways, Josh has a website where you can find all of his stuff at 10leej.com/stalker. Steve has many places where you can find him. The place you probably want me to promote is youtube.com/@0linux with an X instead of a Z. Those letters are different. Matt, you know this. And Tyler, who's not here, is at youtube.com/ZanyOG. I should just say that because it's nice to do. You can find all of our contact information, including the email address and all that stuff at at thelinuxcast.org/contact. And all that stuff is there easily for you to just click on instead of having to type any of those things that I just set out. So that's really nice. So that's the contact information. I'm sure I forgot something. It wasn't as polished as I'd hoped it would be. Anyways, moving on to the next one. So Josh, your next one.
Development for KDE Plasma version 6 has started. Just in time to go back to talk about breaking desktop environments. Of course, I understand that there's a certain somebody around here that maintains a distribution where its default desktop environment is KDE Plasma. So as a result, he's a big lover of KDE Plasma. I'm surprised he didn't report this article. So, but they've already shown off a new feature with KDE. Big surprise right there, right? But the very first thing that they talk about is a settings panel actually being able to being able to display a much wider variety of file types for like your default permissions. So like your MIME types and such. So I think there you can now have a separate dialer menu for in the event that you have a phone connected through KDE Connect. I think that actually dynamically spawns. So if you don't have KDE Connect installed or even a device set up with it, it won't even show. And it's just got like a lot of cool little neat features that's just like in there, like border highlights and stuff in there, which looks really cool in concept. I don't know if it will actually work in practice though, because it's KDE. They slap on these new features and then they just forget about them. But
yeah,
I'm sure,
they might forget about the tiling thing they just introduced, which I didn't like at all.
They might forget about it, and you know what? They will probably forget about that for the next 3 years until like somebody decides that, hey, you know what? I'm going to figure out how this KDE bug tracker works, and I'm going to figure out exactly which module its named is, because the module name is completely different from like how it's presented to you to begin with. But it's fine because this is the KDE bug tracker, and it's perfectly fine. There's no problem with it whatsoever.
Oh. Okay.
The KDE bug tracker is kind of like the websites of Eric Dubois.
Yes. There's a lot of stuff everywhere.
Okay, so let me put this out there. I think that people are going to be really disappointed in Plasma 6. Because you're gonna download Plasma 6 and it's gonna look exactly like Plasma 5. Yeah, there's gonna be a few polishes and stuff like that, but it's gonna look mostly the same. And they're gonna wonder, what's the big deal? Why is this a version number bump? Like obviously there's a lot of stuff in QT6 that is going to enable them to do stuff over time, but when 6 comes out next year or whatever it is, it's going to look basically the same as KDE does now, and it's going to confuse a lot of people. That's my prediction. Steve, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that people asked me, since Zero Linux is based on KDE, number one and foremost, but they were asking me, okay, KDE Plasma 5.27 is going to introduce welcome guide dialogue thing, a majig. Are you gonna include it in Zero Linux? I'm like, where is it? How can I uproot it? Don't like it. So yes, I agree with you. It's gonna look exactly the same because all the work, as Nicolo mentioned in multiple of his videos, it's going to be mostly under the hood maintenance work and getting ready for better Wayland for NVIDIA, better handling of files, better handling of memory, better handling of multiple things. But that's where the majority of the work is would have been done for Plasma 6. There will be a few changes, like on top, like the cherry on top, is a few features that are very useful for some users. One example is it's going to support. I don't know if they mentioned it in this article. I didn't get to read it, but Nicolo mentioned it once. It's going to support more online accounts. And better. Like they're gonna have Nextcloud and better support for Nextcloud accounts, better support for Google accounts, Google Drive accounts, and stuff like that. They're gonna work on under the hood stuff, but visually, it's going to look exactly the same. With, for example, it's mentioned in the article that Josh is talking about is the accent colors. Now there will be support for full accent support from the wallpaper rather than the limited accent colors that exists today in Plasma 5.26.27. So
one thing that I'm really excited about is I've actually been paying attention to like the Planet KDE website, as well as I sit idle in IRC chat rooms that KDE developers are in. They're doing a lot of under the hood changes, specifically around making KDE frameworks less toxic to have to compile. Which, as a guy that uses Gentoo, I appreciate that. But you have to realize that the pace for that KDE actually the pace that the Plasma project updates is very unique compared to like all the other distributions. It's almost similar to Chromium, where KDE Frameworks updates about every 4 weeks. There's a Plasma release every 3 months. There's a Qt update like for KDE's fork of Qt, because they don't use stock Qt, they fork Qt and they maintain a version of Qt that they base on. So that updates every 2 weeks, and it's a weird and unusual release cycle that actually does cause some chaos. And they're working on a little bit way to handle like transitions, because throughout the course of Plasma 5, there is a big difference between, like, say, how an application like a basic window like their terminal console. There is a very massive difference between modern console and version 5.0 console. You can actually not get a modern version of a console to open up on an older version of KDE Plasma because the KDE Plasma frameworks don't exist.
Correct. And they're working also on KWin, because KWin has been the bane of KDE's existence. It always crashes. It always misbehaves. They're gonna be
but desktop cubes and wobbly windows.
They're gonna be polishing that, because don't forget they just added the tiling aspect of it. So that's more work for the compositor to do. So they cannot add that without polishing KWin first. And their implementation of manual tiling, manual, however you're gonna call it, it has a big problem. You cannot save your custom layouts. You can do them on the current session once you log out and log back in or exit the tiling system. The layouts that you worked, let's say, 20 minutes to set up, are gone.
Expecting that tiling thing to be perfect right out of the bat, it would have been a mistake in the first place. It's the first version that they pushed out, so it's not surprising that it's.
And they're doing it. And if you notice, if you look closely at the introduction of the tiling system in KDE, I don't know, it's very close to Windows's version.
Well, I think that's probably purposeful because people are used to it. That's probably the reason why they didn't just take Bismuth and use that.
Bismuth is amazing. I keep it. It's on Zero Linux deactivated, but it's there. Nobody noticed it yet.
Yeah. So I have no problem with KDE focusing on stuff that underneath the hood in Plasma.
No, me neither.
I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I just know people. And I know that when people say, hey, look at this thing just got bumped up to a brand new version of the thing. And when they see that it looks exactly the same, they're going to wonder what the big deal was. And the reason why I know this is because, all right, so this is obviously on a much smaller scale, but you guys may not pay attention to the window manager like community, whatever, but when DWM moved from 6.2 to 6.3, people freaked the fuck out.
They did.
I mean,
they really did.
Literally, the only thing they changed was one line, and they changed. It was the version bump. That's all they did. They moved it from 6.2 to 6.3, and people freaked out. I mean, like,
now suddenly all their DWM builds were out of date, even though they were technically up to date because they're all individual forks.
Well, because the vast majority of people who use DWM probably started on 6.2 because it's been around for literally forever, and probably had no clue how to update to version 6.3, because when was the last time you ever had to update DWM? Because it's been the same forever. And then they almost immediately went to 6.4, and you're like, what kind of world are we living in? And it's weird because like there were new features in 6.4, but there were no new features in 6.3, and people were looking for them for weeks. Like, what changed? Even though they said in like the release notes or whatever, like, hey, we changed one line, it changed the version number. That's all we changed. Yet people still looked for something that was different because DWM changes the version number so rarely. And that's the same thing that's going to happen to this thing here, is that people are going to be looking for those user-facing changes, and it's going to be very interesting to see how people react when they're really, aren't that.
Honestly, if you want to watch like a lot of their discussion, just pull in the Git repo for DWM and then just type in git log and just read all the messages. Some of it's actually pretty hilarious. It goes like, I'm changing this because this sucks. I'm changing this because your fix sucks. I'm changing this because it does absolutely nothing.
Yeah, they don't always get along all that well.
No, they really don't.
Okay, we really do have to move on. So, Steve, are you next? I think you're next, right?
Yep.
He can be next.
Okay, go ahead next.
My second story is something we talked about on my podcast. It's OBS Studio 29.01 that got released yesterday or something like that, and today they released 29.02 as I was on the podcast. So,
of course.
Yeah. So, but it was one change added to the list of changes to 29.01. But basically, the list of changes are very important for some users, especially NVIDIA users, because they fixed the NVIDIA Audio Effects SDK, which was outdated. The NVIDIA Audio Effects SDK is outdated message appearing on the noise reduction filter properties when the SDK wasn't installed. Fixed a crash that could happen if you use NVIDIA audio effect filters and then later uninstall the SDK. There's a common theme here, NVIDIA. Fix the expander and upward compressor audio filters sounding distorted. Added a knee width option to the upward compressor audio filter to improve quality. And the fix for 29.02 was another fix to the compressor. Fixed software rendering not working properly on Linux. They fixed a bug where the stats window panel would show an incorrect disk space calculation when pausing recordings. Happened to me. Fixed a bug on Windows. That's not us. Where the Force SDR setting in window capture wasn't showing up. Fixed the bug. Okay, I'm gonna skip that one. It's a macOS bug. Fixed a bug where Linux captures would not work correctly on X11. So common on Linux. I went through this so many times. Fixed the crash on Linux when using Wayland, not me, and trying to use the automatic scene switcher. Fixed a bug where alpha wouldn't output properly when setting OBS to use BGRA color format. Didn't see that one. Fixed a crash on startup when OBS was minimized. So many times. Thank you, OBS. Finally. Fixed a bug where projectors could look washed out when projecting SDR content while using an HDR display. Fixed a crash when using the virtual camera as an OBS source and changing the canvas resolution. Had that as well.
Sounds like this was a really big bug fix release, which is good.
Amazing. A few other RTMP fixes and encoder settings. But yeah, that was a big bug fix release. It helped me. I don't see the crashes anymore. No more NVENC encoder issues. No more crashes.
The
only
point release after a big like .0 release is always big. Because they come up and fix the bugs that were in the one that had all the changes.
But they fixed quite a lot of NVIDIA and encoder.
So you're saying that maybe I should take a time and recompile a brand new app image of OBS, because I've been using a app image build of OBS that I generated based off of OBS 28 for a very long time now.
Well, you have to use the flatpak version because Titan 652. I talked to him the other day. The reason it takes so long to compile his version from the AUR is because it uses the CEF certificates and stuff like that from Chromium, and he was like he had no choice but to do that because a lot of browser plugins rely on that.
It's true. Because Arch Linux doesn't support a version of the Chromium embedded framework that's compatible with OBS Studio, because OBS Studio decides that they're going to standardize on such an old version of it. Which I don't necessarily blame them for, because they do that in the name of stability, which, Arch is anything but a stability-focused distribution.
Yeah. So, but when you try to compile the Titan 652 version, it takes hours, literally hours, and sometimes errors, and then you have to recompile from scratch, and oh, Jesus.
Sounds like fun.
But yeah, it was a major point release, this one, and thank you, OBS developers. You're making our lives better. If only I have one remark. If only OBS can allow us to have a what's it called, a overlay thing like the other version, the fork of OBS has.
Streamlabs or whatever it is.
Yeah, because for game streamers that I will be soon, that's very helpful.
Okay.
Integrate that, please.
If I could say something to OBS, would you please make it so that transforms work better?
Oh yeah, I would agree on that because I did it today. Please,
just make transforms easier to do. Like, we have a mouse. Let us drag and drop things in like transform mode instead of having to use the mouse wheel to hurriedly move up numbers like we're in the 80s again.
Yeah, and I didn't know that I had to hold Alt on my keyboard to do the transforms. I kept, because the video I saw on how to do transforms, he was using a Mac and he kept saying option. I'm like,
but
I have a Windows keyboard.
Like, I do not have this button.
I do not have this button. What is option? I'm like, I had to open my MacBook to see where the option is positioned to know. Oh, it's the Alt key.
Okay, hold on a second. Are you saying that you can use the Alt key to do transforms?
You didn't know that?
No.
You didn't know that?
No, I always super E and then actually change the numbers. Why do you think it takes me so long?
For someone who relies on transforms, you didn't know that you could do it with the Alt key?
No, I didn't know that. I'm gonna.
I'll be honest with you guys. I don't know what transforms realistically are. So maybe one of these days I'll take the time to figure it out because I still run the super basic.
Okay.
OBS.
Alts don't. The alt.
It captures screen and then resize.
Tell me how this is supposed to work, Steve. Teach me right here in the
podcast. We'll end this live right now. He's excited.
Well, because just holding Alt when an object is selected does not work. It just moves the window. Because Alt in XFCE is the modifier for dragging a window around.
Well, you're on XFCE. I'm on the KDE.
It's not going to work for me, bitch. Okay. I'll have to figure that
out. Unless you said it somewhere, but. What I did today was I took the window. I made it pop up. There was me and there was Jesse, and then I took it again. I added another window capture, and then I resized it with the Alt key. Me, Jesse, and now I have two people. But the problem that I went through today is the one that you went through on the first episode where we started. Whenever his camera is disabled, he's on the right. When he enables his camera, he switched to the left. So he becomes me, I become him.
Yeah, that's not OBS's fault. That's Discord being a piece of shit.
No, I'm saying I went through that with Discord. Yeah.
Yeah, Discord is the thing that causes that thing. The cameras to move around. It's dumb. Luckily, it seems that no matter which order we join the room here, we all do eventually get in the right order, but only once the cameras are turned on.
Yeah, when the cameras are turned on, it organizes it alphabetically. When the cameras are turned off, it's reverse alphabetical for some reason.
That is so
Be
weird.
right back. I'm googling what transforms look like and what's so great about them. Let's see, OBS transformation. That way I can understand what you guys are talking about, but I'll worry about that later. We're doing a podcast right now.
It literally just cuts out other parts. So when I have the whole Discord call, I can focus just in on your face, Josh, or just in on Steve's face. It just cuts out all the rest of it. It's basically cropping is basically what it does. That's what transforms are. There's other things you can do like rotate and stuff like that if you wanted to do that, and you can use it in concert with the transformation or the transitions if you want, so that you can do transitions with transforms. But that gets way too complicated. Anyways, dude, we only have 15 minutes left. We have to go. Moving on to the last link of the thing. We'll just hit this really quick. The System 76 guys have released more information about their new Cosmic desktop, which is supposedly going to happen this year. I will believe it when I see it, but we'll see. Anyways, they have released some more information. Basically, all the screenshots we've seen so far, even in the last kind of like info dump that they had, was all about their settings panel and the settings that they're adding to their desktop environment. So they're focusing big on gestures and things like that in this press release that they have out here and stuff like that. And then they also have some more revamped settings and stuff for the desktop environment and stuff. Their modeling, it's really weird because it's like their settings panels like half GNOME, half KDE.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, obviously it's not actually based and forked off from those things. It's just, it looks that way, right? It's funky a little bit. Obviously all this stuff is really, really early. But
if anything, it's very GNOME inspired.
Well, it is GNOME inspired, but they've like made things smaller, and then they've added the.
They're experimenting right now. They're experimenting.
If it's coming out this year, they better stop experimenting and decide. I'm just saying. I mean, granted, the year did just start, but you guys, it's here. I don't know. This desktop environment is very confusing to me. Like, I understand why they did it. Like they wanted to leave behind GNOME and stop having to deal with extensions breaking every time GNOME decided that they were going to update, which they do on purpose, by the way. They say they don't break extensions on purpose, but they break them on purpose.
No. That's a small comment on that.
I was told it's a feature, not a bug, because it all has to do with the version numbers.
It's not about version numbers only. It's like the underlying code of the desktop environment changes so drastically sometimes. Most of the time when you go from major version to major version, the extensions need to adapt. So they need a short period of time to adapt their code to the new underlying desktop environment. So if you give the extension developers some time, there are some extensions that break, and that's it. They take maybe 6 to 7 months to get updated. I agree on that. But the most important ones, like Dash to Dock, Blur My Shell, Arc Menu, and all these, they get immediately updated, like within a few days to maximum a week after. And
come on. There's one more extension that's much more important than any of those, and that's caffeine.
Oh yeah, that one takes
you gotta have caffeine, especially if you're gonna be watching any like live streams when you full screen the window. It's nice to not have your screen locked while you're doing that.
Or if you're recording a video,
or recording a video, or even playing a video game, because game controller input does not actually stop the screensaver.
All right.
Yeah, but there's a fork that is always maintained. But it's a backup. It's a backup.
There's a fork that's maintained now. But there was a period of time where, like, that fork even wasn't maintained.
True.
Anyway, so the Cosmic Desktop is coming out this year. It'll be very interesting to see. I'm not going to try it on Pop! OS. I want to be a rebel and just try it on Fedora. See how it works.
I'm sure somebody will port it.
I'm sure it'll be cool. All right. Anyways, that is it for the news. We have to run through the thingies of the week. So the last thing that we have to talk about is the thingies of the week. So we could have called this section anything, but we decided to call it thingies because everything else was trademarked and we didn't want to get sued. So I'm going to go first. I'm very, I can go very, very quickly because everyone's heard of this one. This is called Conky. It's basically a system info / whatever you want it to be type of thing. And it will put basically, again, whatever you want on your desktop. I've seen people use it as their complete bar setup if they wanted to do that. I don't do that. You probably notice if you've seen my main screen and if you're watching the video, I have Conky over here on the side, and it just shows me the weather. It shows me my current YouTube subscriber count, thanks to Linux Dabbler for giving me his script on that, and then my RAM usage. That's basically it. I like to have it. I don't like it in a tiling window manager where you hardly ever see the desktop, but in a floating window manager where things are moving around and you oftentimes see your wallpaper, having some data there or just something there that gives you some extra stuff has been really, really nice. And the configuration is not hard at all. Like, I always thought that the configuration for Conky would be, difficult, but it's just variable. It's just variable based. That's literally all it is. Like, you set variables, and it has preset variables, and you just call the variables. That's literally the way you do it. So
But it's written in Lua, right?
I don't know. It's not configured in Lua.
Conky itself is written in Lua, but it reads
Yeah.
CSS scripts.
So it's not. If it was configured in Lua, I would like it less. I'm just putting that out there. It's definitely not configured in Lua, or at least at least the way I'm doing. I did see other people do their configuration files different, so maybe you can configure it in Lua.
You can,
but I don't. I just use variables that are predefined and stuff like that. So it was very easy.
One thing that I really like about Conky is that you can actually create dynamic menus that are indexable and interactable. So like if you've ever looked at like Regolith Linux before, that's it's an Ubuntu spin with IE3. They're very opinionated. If you're an IE3 fanboy already, you will probably absolutely hate it.
I hated it.
Yeah. But anyways, they have this wonderful Conky menu that sits on the desktop that you can click. You can look at all the key bindings and stuff like that. Even DistroTube's download package for like his desktop environment runs a similar script much like that too. And Caffeine is just one of those. It's a very underappreciated application because it can do cool things. I've seen complete file managers and terminal environments written in with just Conky script.
Yeah, it's very extensible.
It's one of those really cool things about Linux that you wish that more people actually used or actually remembered existed.
Well, people take a look at Conky and think that, man, where are you, like from the 90s? Why are you still using Conky? What were you going to say, Steve?
Well, I was going to say that you being a window manager guy, having everything tiled on your window, why do you even have a wallpaper? It's like you barely see it. And then having and then when you minimize or close windows, it's the rare times you see your wallpaper,
it's the same reason as to why I ask why you have a transparent terminal on Zero Linux.
Well, I'm in an XFCE now, so it makes a lot more sense to me. I think if I was still using i3, it wouldn't make sense to me.
But related to Conky, for me, I don't use Conky for one simple reason: is if I forget my monitor turned on for whatever reason, it causes burn-in. It stays like for a few days and then it disappears. I even see it on Grub when I reboot my system and I'm on Grub. I can still see the Conky.
Things move around on my system so often, nothing stays that. I mean,
yeah.
So, Josh, your thingy of the week.
My thingy of the week is something that Zero Linux actually reminded me exists. It's called ButterFS Assistant. So, if you've ever used anything like Garuda Linux, it's actually they have their own fork of this project, but if you use the ButterFS file system on your desktop machine, this is actually one of those applications that I actually highly recommend, to the point where you're just like, you probably should be installing it. Because as a guy that uses ButterFS on both my desktop and my servers, there's one thing that I forget to do quite often. That's called scrub and balance the file system, which if you're going to be doing anything with like data integrity management, you want to be able to run those scrubs and balances, because the balances help rebalance your RAID arrays and make sure that your RAID arrays are working like they should and that files are mirrored like they should be. Scrubs does a complete checksum of the entire file system, make sure that everything's great. It even integrates with Snapper, a tool that I've talked about multiple times on like my own channel, where you can manage your your file system snapshots. You can even schedule and prune snapshots from it. It's a very well designed tool just for ButterFS management. So honestly, like I'm surprised that like a tool like this is actually still around and not more people use it.
Especially ButterFS users, which I am not. I'm an XFS user. But actually, ButterFS Assistant is by one of the Garuda developers.
Yeah, but there's two different versions. It's kind of weird, where it's just like you have the standalone version that the one guy develops, and then Garuda has like a separate fork of it from the looks of it.
Well, it was created by Dragonfire. This one, I think.
Yeah.
It's not a fork. It's a better implementation. It was in the works for a long time, from what he told me, because I came up with the idea back in the day, very early days of Zero Linux, where someone kept, you know how with a Snapper, to be able to restore a snapshot, you have to boot live ISO and then chroot and
Yeah.
do all. Yeah, there was no GUI that did it with a click. So we
Yeah, and that's something that TimeShift has had that Snapper or even the Snapper GUI program did not have.
exactly.
And
So there was a developer who created an app for Zero Linux that did that, but it was so basic, it was just a couple of buttons. But on the back end, it was doing a lot more. So, not you didn't have to chroot or do anything. You would click of a button, you could restore to a previous snapshot. But then the Garuda brains saw interest arising around Snapper, so they created a better version of what the developer of mine created for Zero Linux. That's why
well,
mine now is dead.
it's not that there was a lot of momentum behind Snapper. There always has been a lot of momentum behind Snapper because Snapper is actually developed and created by OpenSUSE.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna have to. Steve, are you gonna lose power in 3 minutes?
No.
Okay. Then I'm not. Then I'm not gonna. You guys can carry on. If you're just gonna disappear off the face of the earth, I wanted to make sure you could get your thingy of the weekend.
No. Don't worry, because it's an unlimited weekend. I keep the generator on, because it's unlimited. I can download whatever I want. So my thingy of the week is something that I wanted to talk about for so long because I've been using it for over 5 years. It's called AirDroid. It's a it's a website basically, but somebody created an Electron or using native Fire to make it into a separate app. But what AirDroid is, basically you download an AirDroid client on your phone. It's better than KDE Connect. I can guarantee you that. So
not really the same things, are they?
Well, you can access your phone. Not only access it by like KDE Connect, but you can install, uninstall applications, send messages, read your email. If you go to airdroid.net, I think, or .org, I forget. AirDroid, yeah, it's airdroid.com. You can see what it looks like. But once you launch the client on your phone, you can either subscribe to an online account so you can access it from anywhere. Like if you have a tablet at home and you run AirDroid on it and you want to access your tablet from anywhere, you can do that. But if you want to do it just locally, you can just input your IP address with a port number in your browser, and you can do it that way. But AirDroid now is an app. It automatically detects your phone on your network, and it prompts you to allow access to your phone. And once you allow it access, you can do whatever your heart desires on your phone. You can send emails, read emails, send messages, SMS, install applications, access your photos, your videos, and so much more. It's an amazing tool that saved my hide, even on iPhone. Now it supports iPhone, limited, because iPhone doesn't give you access to your system, so you cannot install and uninstall apps, but you can still send SMS, read your email.
Which one do you have to download in order to get it to work? AirDroid Personal, AirDroid Cast, or one of the other ones?
It's just called AirDroid. On my iPhone, it's called AirDroid. When I was
I
using,
imagine it's AirDroid Personal that you install on your machine, and then if I look at AirDroid here, there's an application of AirDroid as well, file and remote access. That's probably the one you want.
yeah,
And then it looks like everything else is just
it's
a plugin on
personal.
top.
It's personal that you have to download.
That said, Steve, you actually don't need to pay them any money to do this for you, because you know that you can just create a mesh VPN network using a self-hosted service like Headscale, or a paid support service like Tailscale to be able to do this yourself. Not a sponsor.
No. Yeah, well, this is for normal users. If you want to be somebody like you, Josh, yeah, I would use that. But It's simple. Download, launch, download the app on your phone, connect, you're done. You can do whatever you want. Even my grandma can do it. Not that I have any grandmas still alive, but if they were, they would be able to use that.
That went dark fast.
But you can use it for personal use, or you can use it for businesses on a large scale to support more devices and stuff like that. But it's an amazing tool. I recommend it to all Android users. iPhone users, not so much, because it's very limited. But for Android users, it will save you literally. Like when I used to use Android, I used to flash my phone like I don't know 50 times a day. So it saved me. Say to back up. You can download everything on your phone as a single zip file. That's the best part. That's
Cool.
the thing that saved me.
That does sound cool. All right, so that is it for this episode of the podcast. Coming up next week, we will be doing the exact same thing, just with different topics. And Tyler again will be off next week, so it'll be just the three of us. We had a good time today, boys. It was really fun. If you wanna, if you have thoughts on any of the things we talked about today, you can leave those in the comment section below. If you're looking for timestamps on any of the podcasts, those do show up a couple hours after the stream ends. So if you're already here and listening to me say this, even after watching the replay, I apologize that I didn't say it at the beginning, but timestamps do always show up on the podcasts eventually. So in the future, if you want to watch afterwards, you can, and skip around to wherever you want to listen to. Which is nice. So before I go, I should take a moment to thank my current patrons. Thanks to everybody who does support me on Patreon at patreon.com/linuxcast. You guys are all absolutely amazing. Without you, the channel would not be anywhere near where it is right now. So thank you so very, very much for your support. I truly do appreciate it. We record this live every Saturday around 3:00 p.m. Eastern Time. Today we were running late because I did not know the transform trick. Thanks for holding out on me, Steve. I appreciate that. Anyways, like I said, live every Saturday, 3:00 p.m. Eastern Time or thereabouts. If you want to watch, youtube.com/linuxcast. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.